Hey guys, it's Himana Wasami. For my first YouTube video, I wanted to do a fan fiction reading, and because I love reading, and I was like debating a little bit with myself about what to read, and I decided on a tragedy angst one shot by Leofan221. It's called I Only Wish I Could Have Done More. And if you guys don't really like mentions of like horribly disturbing, like, torture or whatever, like, saying the character was tortured, then I would suggest going and watching a happy video now. Or just, or if you're a brave soul, stick around. Anyway, let's get this started. Anastasia, why did you have to blow it this bad? Anastasia said to herself for the millionth time that night, as she pressed the gas pedal to the floor and down an incredibly old, red dirt road in the middle of nowhere. Okay, it was somewhere outside the city, but where, the young woman had no idea. She was simply following her GPS. There were tears in Anastasia's eyes, but she felt the need to keep them there, to almost punish herself. And remind herself why she couldn't turn the car around and head home, pretending that none of what had happened years ago had happened. Like every other time, she had tried to get up the guts to drive out and at least try to fix what she had done. Anastasia was harshly grabbed by one of the 4 identical men that were attempting to kidnap her. She protested, of course, but to no avail. It was as if he was a robot or something. Then something hit the man's back, and he stumbled forward, releasing his burden, and Anastasia found herself falling. Then she wasn't. She peeped her eyes open to see why this hadn't happened. There was someone holding her, but she was too rattled to see the person clearly. He placed her gently on the ground. It had been too strong to be a woman. Too stocky, also. Then he rushed forward and started making sure that she wouldn't be kidnapped, using moves that Anastasia had only seen in ninja movies and things like that. He wielded a pair of swords with ease and grace, like he had done this all his life. He must have been incredibly good at fighting. He must have gotten into fights a lot. He might have even liked fighting, judging by both the way he fought and the silvery traces of multiple scars that ran over his body, illuminated by the moonlight. He drove the men hard, and Anastasia saw that the man was also being driven toward the end of the alleyway. But before that point, the men were on the ground, unmoving. The man had surely done his job. Well. He turned and started walking back to her, intent most likely on seeing if she was all right. She didn't feel all right. She had been nearly kidnapped, but saved by an unknown man who could do anything to her. Then, just as he was asking if she was okay, a harsh sound reached Anastasia's ears. A gunshot. Funny. She hadn't seen a gun on any of the men. She grabbed him as he fell, dragging him towards the light to see how bad the injuries were. When she touched it, she recoiled in shock and horror, and the scream just ripped out of her mouth, harsh and high. Lights came on all over the block, and people peeked out of windows, curious as to what the commotion was about. Anastasia just screamed, instincts on autopilot as always. She had always imagined some fantastic other worlds, but nothing like this. Not in reality. The man, it turned out, was no man at all. In the house lights, she could see that it was a humanoid-looking turtle, with forest green skin, freckled white, and a blue mask. That mask puzzled Anastasia greatly. How had it gotten there? Had he torn it from one of his victims as some kind of trophy for everyone else he encountered to see, recognize, and fear? Or had he been eating somebody, and the piece of fabric had gotten stuck there? Anastasia shook herself out of that second thought right away, and settled with the first theory, no matter how unsettling it seemed. The shell was domed, and had a slightly more brown color to it than his skin, covering his entire back. He wore 3 belts, 2 of which were draped over his shoulder, holding sheaths for his swords. The thickest one was torn from the gunshot, which left a tear in its shell, The bullet left a trail of scorched shell all the way to its thick green arm. It was sickening to look at. Then sirens suddenly startled Anna, as her friends called her, shattering her concentration on the turtle man before her, who groaned and tried to get up. It stood shakily, gripping its swords. A police car pulled into the head of the alleyway, blocking their escape route. Get behind me, the turtle ordered, as the policemen came ripping out of the vehicle, already gripping their guns, hands shaking faintly, but not enough to hope that they would miss. "Nobody move," one called, and the creature seemed to take enough and charged. Anastasia could only watch as the guns were fired and the turtle's speed decreased dramatically, and his three-fingered hand flew to its now doubly injured arm. Anastasia wanted to run, scream at the police to stop, or do something, but seemed frozen in place, unable to do anything as the poor creature limped back, somehow prying off the manhole cover and dropping down, replacing the cover as it went. No one, not even Anastasia, not even Anna, seemed willing to immediately follow it. Instead, the cops pulled out a cell phone, calling backup. Anastasia finally moved, running across the street before anyone saw her and asked questions, tears already brimming in her eyes. She hid behind a dumpster a few blocks away and thought of what she had done. It had, weird as it was to think about, helped her, saved her, and then hid her from the police, protecting her with its body. Maybe it was sentient. Of course it was sentient. But that didn't mean that it was going to be her friend or anything. She hadn't known what it was when she had screamed, but that obviously didn't excuse the fact that she had been the one to draw attention to the turtle thing by screaming. She hated herself for it and returned home, a one-room apartment, slamming the door, leaning against it, sobbing. Then she stood, eyes shining with determination. She would never forget what happened tonight, and she knew the perfect way to make sure the world didn't either. She grabbed her laptop, and her fingers flew across the keyboard. She wrote and rewrote the story of her day. Except in her story, she befriended the turtle, and they went on adventures together, saving the world time and again. Now she turned left into an overgrown parking lot that looked long abandoned. At the far end were rides and tents, all of the metal rusted and fabric torn and tattered. This was where her search ended. It had started with a businesswoman, Oroku Kurai. She had bought one of the turtle creatures from Area 51's agent, John Bishop. Anna had been digging a long time before finding even that piece of information. She had visited Kurai and begged to be able to see it, but was informed that it had died a few years back. But Kurai told Anna that the one she had bought had worn an orange mask and had brown freckles, not white ones. It had lived with her until she set it free, but it was never able to rejoin its family again before it died all alone. The turtle had once had a family? It had a family, ma'am? Oh, yes, a father and 3 brothers. They were all taken to Area 51 and tortured/examined. Finally, my conscience compelled me to buy at least the youngest one, the happiest, immature one, Michelangelo. There was heavy sadness to her voice, like she had wanted to do more, but had done too little, too late. You weren't the only one, Kurai, Anna thought. Is that the name of the one you set free? Didn't that cost a lot of money? Kurai didn't answer the second question, but gave a weak yes to the first one. She had to take a shaky breath before continuing her narrative. Well, you see, there was the eldest, Leonardo, then Raphael, then Donatello, and the youngest one was Michelangelo. He I bought, only with severe negotiations, as you know. I had wanted to buy them all, to prevent them from being treated like monsters. I am glad I was able to at least save the youngest one. The others didn't argue. Eventually, they were all bought. Raphael by a zoo. I saw him only once, but his owners refused any amount of money I offered them. Donatello was sent to a circus. He passed about 2 months ago. And Leonardo? He was passed around, along with his master. Last I heard, the rat had died, and Leonardo was in a carnival. Somewhere just outside the city, actually. That was all Anna had needed to know, other than the actual name of the carnival. Manny's Many Wonders, apparently. She slowly got out of the car, closing the door delicately, like it would snap if closed too hard. She walked down the main street, wondering how long this place had been on a downward spiral. Too long. There were only a few families walking around, their children clutching prized teddy bears that had probably cost way too much money, like they were afraid to let go. The rides themselves looked ready to rust out and collapse. But Anna paid all that no mind, only heading towards the attraction at the back, pushing back the tent flap and ignoring the heat wave caused by the summer evening. She drove herself towards the large, heavily rusted cage at the far end with a heavy heart. When she reached it, her breathing picked up. There was the turtle, lying curled in the fetal position on the dirty floor of its cage. She noted idly that there wasn't anyone around to guard this turtle, or feed it, or protect her should Leonardo get violent at seeing her again. Gulping hard, she knelt down beside the door, gripping 2 bars with her slender olive-colored hands. Deep breaths were the only sound for a moment in the still tent. "Hello?" Anna asked, but got no response. It must have thought that she was just another visitor, eager to see if the sign for the incredible large talking turtle was entirely accurate. She steeled herself and tried again, this time using his name. "Leonardo?" This time, the turtle slowly pushed itself up to a seating position and turned around to look at her. Anna was shocked to see how bad it looked. Its skin was gray and leathery, nothing like the forest green skin that she had seen all those years ago. Even its shell had taken a beating. The octagons were barely distinguishable from the tears, tatters, and batterings that crisscrossed its whole shell. It was also naked, stripped of everything so that it lay bare and exposed on the ground, like a true animal. Leonardo, had looked shocked at seeing her, which stretched its already thin skin so much, it seemed it would have snapped had Leonardo been any more shocked. Anna smiled sadly as she leaned her head up against the bars, tears already brimming. "I bet you don't remember me, huh?" Leonardo seemed to think for a moment before extending its arm, pointing a thinner-looking finger at her. "The girl?" Leo's voice was never even. It was as broken and scratched as its body, and most likely spirit. "Yeah, I'm the girl," Anna said, sitting more comfortably on the dirt floor of the tent, tears slowly creeping down her face. "You screamed?" Leo asked, face confused, like he could only barely remember what had happened to make him as thin, battered, and weak as he was now. Anna swallowed hard. This was all she had expected from this poor creature, after all those years in Area 51. "Yeah," was all she could say, head again leaning against the bars. "You broke us." "I know I did. I'm so sorry for all of this." "Sorry. Can't fix." It seemed to discover its voice again as it talked. It slowly crawled over to the wall, leaning against it for support as it sat as close to Anna as possible. Its skin was thickly crusted with dirt, grime, and other things that Anna didn't want to think about. "I know it can't do anything. I can't even let you know how much I regret that night. I hate myself, you know." "Don't. Only natural," Leo croaked. If Leo meant that as a reassuring gesture, it had the opposite effect. Anna found it heartbreaking that Leo could have been so selfless as to lay aside his needs in order to care about her emotions and feelings. But she had been too wrapped up in her own self-preservation that night, and had ruined any chance of getting to know the turtle better. Leo noticed, and reached a hand through the bars, wiping her tears away with a shaky hand. You were young, Leo croaked and coughed, each one sounding more miserable than the last. Then it hit Anna. Leo was dying, slowly. But he was making sure that with his last few minutes he had touched another life. You already have so much. If only you knew, Anna thought as she blinked back tears. It doesn't change anything, though. If I had been as selfless as you, none of this would have happened. She dropped what she was going to say on top of that when she heard a rattled hushing noise. Nobody is perfect, it whispered, barely holding itself up. Anna saw and gently laid him back down, sighing with hurt when Leo flinched at her touch for a moment. She was going to make Bishop pay for what he had done to this amazing, selfless, and definitely unique person before her, and his family. That Anna swore. Leo started coughing again, turning onto his side and heaving without anything coming up. Anna gripped the bars, this time straining to move or even dent them. At one point, Anna thought she had nearly thrown her shoulder out of socket, but she kept going. Eventually, she had the bars open. She carefully and gently slipped her hands under Leo's arms and gently eased him out of the cage. He was convulsing and coughing horribly. He seemed to relax a little into Anna's arms after a few minutes. He breathed heavily, leaning fully into her, eyes only half open with exhaustion. Then she remembered what she had in her messenger bag, which she had spent hours, days, and even years in the making of. Hey, I, wrote this shortly after that night. Would you care for me to read it to you? At least some of it? The turtle looked like it wanted to roll its eyes, but refrained and nodded slightly. Anna wouldn't have cared if Leo had rolled his eyes. Not like she deserved to read what should have happened, but what she had screwed up. I had to change my name for this story, to avoid court cases and all the interrogations, but anyway, she said, cheeks heating up. She was stalling, and she promised herself she wouldn't stall. It was a simple walk home, but it would change Heather's life forever. She read nearly 3 chapters before Leo's hand blocked the page. Go to the end. She wasn't sure what made the turtle put forth the request, or what made her follow it, but she skipped ahead to the final chapter anyway, giving Leo an incredibly short version of what she had skipped over as she flipped through the pages, ignoring the fact that she was sweating bullets through her shirt from both the summer night and the turtle leaning against her. She read about how the human girl and the turtle, as well as its family, had settled after a huge invasion from Saki's forces. She had always hated him, but couldn't quite put a finger on why. In her story, Saki was a general in an underground army who sought out anybody different, so the turtle's family was at the top of the list. Heather, her character, now lived with the odd little family and trained with them, catching up quickly thanks to Leo's father's teachings. Karai had informed her of all that family had done for her personally, and even showed Anna the leftover snake fangs that would never go away. No wonder her eyes looked a little green around the edges. Donatello was brilliant, yes, but sadly not even he could cure my mutation all the way. Still, I am satisfied with what he did, she had said, eyes filled with longing and sadness. When the book was read all the way, Leo was asleep. Anna shifted, not wanting to wake him, as she shifted his legs over her arms. This was gonna hurt, and be really stupid, but it was something she felt she needed to do. She heaved him up, and wasn't totally surprised that he didn't move at all as she half carried and half stumbled along the back of the tent. Using the other rides and stalls as covers, Anna somehow got Leo back to her car. Then she sprinted back to the tent, found the rat's recently deceased body, closer to the other end of the tent. Had she not seen Leo all those years ago, she might have screamed, but now she saw things like mutants as no big deal. Just another race to accept, nothing more. People with unique looks about them. She carried it all the way to her car, noting that it was a crapload lighter than it should have been, given the fact that it was taller by at least a head than Leo is, but without a shell. Even without that extra burden, Anna was forced to gasp for breath by the time she had gotten halfway back to her car. Eventually, she had both mutants buckled and was driving away back to her apartment. Thankfully, her neighbors were out, probably for a stroll in the park by now. She laid the rat out on her living room carpet as comfortably as she could. Leo went to the couch. Then it hit Anna that she had no idea what to do now. Obviously, she had to bury the rat. Splinter, she thought she had heard Karai call him once. But what to do about Leo? He could live with her. It would be the least she could do. Her mind made up, she went to check on Leo, and found that his temperature was below what felt normal. Worried, Anna checked the turtle's pulse. Her breathing hitched. 1 minute and no beat, no matter where she checked. Tears filling her eyes, Anna closed Leo's eyes, just now realizing that they had been stuck halfway open. Dimly, she wondered if at least he had heard the ending of her story. The one that was still in her messenger bag. The one that everyone had bought, read, and adored. The one that had gotten her famous, at least for a while, before it died down. But then she found that she didn't care. The tears took care of such idle and selfish thoughts, crushing them beneath the weight of the grief she never expected to feel. But she wasn't about to replace it. She had a good reason to mourn. This poor, wonderfully selfless turtle had been a boon to her, inspiring her even now. Then she pulled both of the bodies back into her car and drove out to Northampton, to her family's long-abandoned farmhouse. She didn't go in, however. She pulled up behind the house, to the head of a path, heading off into the woods. She ran and got a wheelbarrow to more effectively and easily transport the father and son to a clearing not far off. She laid them side by side before running back to the barn beside the house, grabbing a shovel. She ran as fast back, then marked 2 triangles, using the corpses as rough measuring sticks. She gritted her teeth. This may take a while, but she was going to do it. Half an hour of painful digging later, and Anna had about 1.5 feet dug. She huffed, reaching for a water bottle she had gotten about 15 minutes ago. She gulped, swallowed a few times, put the cap back on, and resumed digging tiredly. Finally, she couldn't dig anymore, as the sun had gone down. She trudged off to the house and pulled a dusty old blanket from the closet and curled up on the couch. The next morning, Anna had never felt that sore in her life. She stretched and massaged her sore limbs for a few minutes with her hands, then slid off the couch and gargled Listerine for a minute or two, wagering that it would kill enough bacteria that it could count as brushing until she was able to leave. She walked over to the gravesite, only to find 2 mounds of earth greeting her. Puzzled and alarmed, Anna sprinted over, soreness forgotten in her panic. She found a short dagger pressed into the top of the mound, with a note tied around the short, merely bound handle. Anastasia, don't freak out. This is Karai. I tracked you, cried during your conversation with Leo, and followed you first home, then here. You'll find an email with the other Hamado's locations already in your inbox. Enjoy, and don't worry about their burial. Leave that to me. This was the least I could do for you. I only wish I could do more. Hamado Karai. Yep, so that's it. And if there is a specific fan fiction that you all want me to read, just leave the title and author there. And just so you know, I typically only read TMNT fan fictions because that's kind of, my comfort zone or whatever. But I would be willing to do like Avengers or whatever, as long as it's not like too gross. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed that, and yeah, leave a comment. See ya!